Let me read you a comment that's just come in. I've run my joinery business for over 20 years, and in my opinion, people don't pay for quality work anymore. People who biscuit or domino stuff together are not joiners, they're flat pack handymen. My advice, if anyone thinks they can get £300 plus a day down here for quality joinery, let alone MDF domino monkeys. Domino monkeys? Oh, AD, when did you become so bitter? And it may come as a shock to you that I don't disagree with everything he's saying. It's just the way he's saying it, but we'll come back to that later on. I want to go through some of the comments from the joinery pricing video that I did last time, because I've had some amazing comments from people and it warrants further discussion. Let's go for a little drive.
What can I get for you today?
Just a white Americano, please.
Is that a medium?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and do you want to try the Columbia blend with that?
Yeah, go on then. That's lovely. Cheers. Drive. That's a sneaky little route in to a car park hidden away on Newcastle Quayside. It's actually on the Gateshead side. It's always dead and it has amazing views. So there's a little top tip if you're ever visiting Newcastle. And I don't know what it is, but I can't talk with my glasses on. I don't want this channel to end up just talking about joinery rates and the business side of joinery too much, because I know a lot of people follow this channel just for, you know, DIY tips and woodworking tips and stuff like that, and they don't run a business. But I'm hoping that this kind of content will help not only joiners, but also help customers to understand why woodworkers charge what they do. There is no other industry I can think of, off the top of my head anyway, where you have to put so much money and time invested into tools and machinery and a van and premises, and to make so little back from it. And what people... Hello, spider. And what people are charging... Go up the web. No, okay, you can live on the steering wheel. And what people are charging just doesn't match up to that investment in any way, shape or form. And I want to cover off some of that in this video. I'm going to start off with some of the more, not negative, but some of the more challenging comments. But we're going to get onto some more positive stuff later on, so do bear with me. While we're on that subject, let's start off with AD's comment, and it was one of the most recent comments left on the video. AD said, I've run my joinery business for over 20 years, and in my opinion, people don't pay for quality work anymore. People who biscuit or domino stuff together are not joiners, they are flat pack handymen and are totally different from a joiner. What amazes me is how people can charge £300 plus a day for doing basic wardrobes, cupboards, etc. It's not a dig at guys who do that, but the reality is it takes very little skill to bang stuff out of MDF. I'm kind of paraphrasing. Making bowed and curved-topped box frame sash windows takes skill. Staircases with wreathed handrails takes skill. Making curved doors takes skill. I also make kitchens, and at the end of the day, a kitchen is just a box on legs with a door or drawer. Nothing difficult and takes little skill, and yet I can't charge more than £30 per hour, and yet someone tells me I'm too cheap. 80. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with what you're saying. It's how you're saying it. Because you're implying that people who put together stuff out of MDF using dominoes and biscuits don't have any skill. And that is absolutely not the case. I know many absolute top-notch carpenters who use dominoes and biscuits on a daily basis, who are unbelievably highly skilled and can make all the things that you're talking about. The problem is that the market doesn't demand the things that you're talking about. So you've got to make what the market is asking for. And I know plenty kitchen fitters that charge way, way more than £30 an hour. So I do suggest putting your rates up. But if you've said you can't do that, I don't know. You need to branch out into areas where you can do that. If you stay in a market that can't afford any more than £30 an hour, then you're going to be stuck on £30 an hour. If you branch out into a market that can afford to pay more than that, then you can put your rates up. But yes, I do agree, on the whole, making boxes out of MDF isn't that complicated. You do need to have a technical mind. I wouldn't go as far as to suggest that kitchens are easy. I've worked on kitchens that have been really complicated, and I've also worked on some that are literally no more than just putting a few flat pack boxes together and a bit of trim for your cornice and pelmet. It's too big a subject to go into in this video, but don't belittle people who you don't know what their skills are. And just because someone uses dominoes and biscuits doesn't mean they're not skilled, and it also doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be paid a fair wage. Adi goes on to say, my point is people no longer value quality. All they want is something to last a few years. I don't really agree with that. I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, to be honest, because the people who would buy the high-end, you're talking about bespoke curved doors and bespoke sash windows and all that sort of thing, that market still exists. The people at the lower end of the market were never buying that in the first place. People with no money 50 years ago weren't buying the stuff that you're talking about, and people with no money now aren't buying the stuff that you're talking about. I would also point out that when the Eastern Europeans joined the EU back in 2004, the UK construction industry was swamped by cheap labour, which has suppressed wages. I've worked with most EU nations' workers over the years, and the Germans and Scandinavians are excellent tradespeople, but Eastern Europeans are, on the whole, dire. So there are many reasons why wages have stagnated and continue to do so, and freedom of movement is one of them. Okay, the whole Polish people coming over here and undercutting the Brits is no different to Auf Wiedersehen Pet in reverse, and it's no different to UK people going to Germany because Germany has a skills shortage. And by the way, 99% of the time there's no such thing as a skills shortage. It's just the very, very rich companies aren't willing to pay what the skilled people are asking for. So you can't have a go at Polish people for doing that, because we do exactly the same thing. It's a topic that's far too big for this video. But all I would say is, if anyone is substantially undercutting people by charging, for example, £50 a day, which you could never run a self-employed business in the UK charging £50 a day, then that just needs to be gone. But customers are to blame here. And I know of plenty customers with loads of money who happily go out and scour the market for the cheapest possible people they can find to do a job. And it's coming back to this misconception that £15 an hour in self-employed land in any way equates to £15 an hour if you were employed by a company. and it doesn't. And I demonstrated that quite clearly in the previous video. So if you haven't watched the previous video, link in the description below. Anyway, all I would say, AD, I agree with some of the stuff you're saying, but cheer up. Let's go through a couple of the other comments and then we'll move on and we'll drive somewhere else. Michael said, try telling this to a pensioner on a basic pension or a person on benefits. You are just justifying yourself having the best. I'm not quite sure what you mean by justifying yourself having the best, because in the last video all I was talking about was bringing in minimum wage, and I certainly wouldn't describe minimum wage as being the best. If you know different, Michael, and if you run a joinery business, I'm still waiting for anyone, and the videos, that particular video has now had like over 35,000 views, and not a single person has sent me a redacted copy of their accounts who are charging under £30 an hour and who are running a successful business. If you still think you can run a joinery business charging under £30 an hour, then you have a valid argument to make, but you have to be able to prove your argument. And all you need to do is anonymise your accounts, email them to accounts@gosforthhandyman.com from an anonymous email address, but I need to be able to have a look at some accounts that show that you're making a decent income by charging £30 an hour and running a woodworking business. And as yet, 35,000 views down the line, nobody has taken me up on that yet. I'm certainly hoping that you're not suggesting to run a business at a deliberate loss just so that people can afford your services, because that business is going to go belly up very, very quickly. Next on the list, Eddie said, £300 a day. I would expect some Jesus level carpentry. £300 a day isn't expensive for a carpenter or joiner. And in the replies to that comment, Mike said that $300 a day is standard for a handyman in the US. And Eddie then went on to say, I charge a little less than that, but in British pounds, and charge £12.50 an hour after the first hour. £12.50 an hour isn't in any way similar to $300 a day. And Eddie, prime example, you are massively undercharging. You need to charge more. £25 an hour for the first hour, £12.50 an hour thereafter. You can't be making a living. You just can't be. Chris B says the depressing thing is that most customers don't know or don't care the difference between shockingly bad work and first-rate work. I think they do care between shockingly bad and first-rate, but I do think most customers don't care about the difference between mediocre work and what we would consider really, really high-end work. I have seen that time and time again, where people come in and do a job, and then I'm called in to do some other job, and they're like, oh, I've just had my extension done, and you look at it and it's like shockingly bad finish, you know, massive gaps between stuff and crazy amounts of cork filling gaps and stuff, and the customer just, they haven't noticed and they don't care. And even if I pointed it out to them, they don't care. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't strive for perfection, but you shouldn't strive for perfection and sacrifice being able to make a living, I guess. Spencer says, very interesting, but you missed one important point. There's an awful lot of tradesmen out there who work on the books, but complete... Oh, the bridge is opening. Oh, I'm cooking alive in my truck. I need to take my jacket off. Quite warm today. It was freezing this morning. Anyway, Spencer was saying, very interesting, but you missed one important point. There's a lot of trades, basically saying there's a lot of tradesmen doing cash in hand jobs. I think that's becoming less of a problem. In my opinion, maybe you think different, but most people want to pay with credit cards and things these days, and I think the whole cash in hand payment thing is just slowly disappearing. And I was very strict with customers, and it's like whether you pay me cash or card or whatever, it's the same price. At the end of the day, if you're running a business on the premise that you're going to break the law and not pay your taxes, it means you're not competing on a level playing field. It's not sustainable in any way. Either it means that you're going to have to undercut everyone forever, and the taxman will catch up with you at some point, I guarantee that. Or at some point you're going to have to massively put your rates up, at least by 20%. I'm not condoning it, but it's a middle ground between dishonest and above board. There's no middle ground there. It's 100% dishonest. It makes it impossible for people who don't want to break the law to compete. So it's a problem that I think is kind of sorting itself out. Customers, you need to be prepared to pay the same, whether it's cash or card or whatever, because it's not fair on everyone else. And Steve Richardson says, yawn, 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 get on with it. I don't generally listen to the trolls, but you've probably got a point on this occasion. Let's drive somewhere else. Got to show you this quickly. Oh my god, it hasn't changed at all. This hasn't been used for a long time. Many years ago, when I used to work in IT, this was our offices for our business. Man, it looks like it's been empty since we moved out 15 odd years ago-ish. The colour scheme has changed a bit, but man, how long has this been vacant? Oh my god, that's crazy. That was my office. The whole building looks abandoned. We put this in. We put this aircon in for the comms room. We put all those anti-static tiles down. That was our comms room in there. It hasn't changed at all. Man. There's the kitchen through there. Used to get me a cup of coffee. Duncan says, eye-opening how the costs add up. However, if your work rate is 80%, then 1 day per week is non-productive in terms of paid work. Surely you could use that day to do your sales and admin activities. It never works out like that. For the best laid plans, you can guarantee you'll just get caught up with all of your paperwork and admin stuff, and then you'll have a cancellation or something will happen. And yeah, you can get on with a certain amount of stuff in those sort of situations, but you can't really plan for it because your quotes and stuff like that all have to be booked in well in advance. So it's very rare if you get like a day where the customer just says, look, you can't come today for whatever reason. It's very difficult to suddenly rearrange all your quotes and admin activities to happen on that day. Maybe you can catch up with a bit of like accounts and social media and stuff, but it just doesn't work like that, unfortunately. Roth John says, no way on earth would you rent a unit for $28,000 a year without having employees. Yeah, totally. That's what I said in the video. You would absolutely have employees working at that kind of rate.
Hey.
Right. He sounded tired. He goes on to say, do the calculation based on the majority of self-employed carpenters who operate from home. £30 an hour, 50 hours a week. 50 hours a week. Not sustainable, sorry. If you're doing 50 hours a week as a carpenter, you are going to burn out. Maybe in your 20s and stuff, you can get away with that. But anyway, 50 hours a week, when are you going to do all of your sales and quotes and admin and all that? You're not catering for that. 49 weeks a year. I'm not sure where you're getting 49 weeks a year from, because that ain't a normal number of weeks in a year to work. And then you've mentioned £15 at 50 hours a week for 49 weeks. Yeah, if you're a subcontractor, fine. I'm not talking about subcontractors. I'm talking about running your own business. You ain't going to make 36 grand a year charging £15 an hour. Trust me on that. And he went on to say some good points, but also a lot of bad and negative information can be taken from the video. Hopefully you come out of all of this without thinking anything negative. The whole purpose of this is, one, make sure you understand how to calculate your numbers by yourself and make sure you can work out what your break-even point's going to be and all of that. And for customers to understand how much tradespeople need to charge to make any money at all. Because I'm regularly seeing customers saying they can't find anyone to do work, and yet I'm also seeing tradespeople saying they make no money. So something's seriously wrong there. We've got a high market demand and low wages. That's not how the market works. At the point where you've got high market demand, this is the time to put your rates up. Brilliant comment from Alistair from Freebird Interiors. Go and check out his Instagram channel and YouTube channel as well. And he's mentioned a lot of really valid points. I'm not going to read the whole thing word for word. You can go onto the comments of the last video and you can read it if you want to go into the detail of it. But Alistair is saying that he watched the video with a sense of relief. And he says it's painful, but always better to face reality. He says, you have affirmed my suspicions and saved me a job of creating the spreadsheet I was picturing in my mind. And the business is expanding and doing well. But he's saying whenever I run the numbers, it just doesn't seem to stack up. Everything I've been saying in this video and the previous one is that there's far too many people undercutting what should be really, really successful businesses. I've seen Alistair's work. It's absolutely first class, and I think he's exactly right in what he's saying where he's looking to compete more with the big fitted furniture companies. And you know, there's a reason that these big fitted furniture companies have been around for a long time, because they really understand the business side of having to make a profit and having to make money. And if you don't charge enough, that's a fundamental stumbling block. He says, I give customers a more personal and truly bespoke service. It just means accessing a different customer base. And that is exactly right. And you know what it is? If you can't get the work at the rates that you deserve from your current customer base, ditch that customer base. And he's saying, my latest conclusion on the way forward is to scale back before scaling up. And again, completely agree. Cut your costs down to an absolute minimum before making any kind of serious commitments about premises or staff or anything like that. You know, and it's all down to how risk averse you are. And you've got some business people who they'll act very much on a whim of just taking staff on and hope for the best. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't work out. I'm definitely a more cautious player, and whenever I've taken staff on in the past, I've always tried to make sure that I've got at least enough in the bank to cover that person's wages for a full year should the business not come in. A lot of people would say that that's a far too pessimistic way of looking at things, but at least I can sleep at night. Sylvester says, great and very informative, eye-opening video. I wish I'd had that 12 years ago. Recently changed a damaged tyre and something hit me. I paid £15 for changing a tyre in 15 minutes. That's £60 an hour. 100%. Most mechanics are charging way in excess of £40-50 an hour. You go to your main dealerships, £200-300 an hour sometimes, honestly. £60 an hour for changing a tyre. Really common price. Brent raised a very valid point. I was told long ago, if people aren't complaining about your fees, you're not charging enough. Michael from the Midnight Handyman. Hi, Michael. I have got your sticker. I just still haven't done my mailbag video. It's all recorded and it's probably going to be one of my next ones. Anyway, thanks for the breakdown. I usually charge $300 a day or $35 an hour depending on the job. And he has a home basement shop. A fantastic comment from Maria. I'm at the other end of this business as a customer of a joinery company here in London. At the moment, he charges us £1,400 a day. And remember, I then charge my clients the quality. So in other words, the client is paying way in excess of £1,400 a day. And she goes on to say that they've got a cottage in Lancashire and their joiner in Lancashire charges £800 a day. It's strange that we pay at least £350 an hour for a solicitor whose work can be dubious, yet a qualified joiner or carpenter we end up balking at £800 a day. And a really important point that she mentions, you need to educate your clients about price and don't hand them ideas on a plate until the job contract is signed. RF says, I clean windows using the reach and wash system and I can make £35 an hour. Yep, my window cleaner charges me 20 quid to clean our house and it takes them about 10 minutes. That's £120 an hour. I think I've mentioned this before. I have no problem with it whatsoever. I guarantee people in the comments will say, reach and wash system isn't as good as doing it by hand. I don't care. Hello, fly. I'm going to have to shut this window. NP82 said, most industries have qualifications and certifications that provide the customer with a level of assurance that the work will be completed to a standard. However, with joinery, it seems anyone can list themselves online and advertise as a joinery business. I completely disagree with that. The qualifications and certifications have almost nothing to do with the quality of the job being done. All you need to do is go and have a look at new builds to prove that, where everyone working on new build houses is qualified and the quality of the work being carried out is amongst the worst that I've seen, and that's all by qualified people. At the end of the day, you've got people who care and people who don't care. Whether you've got a little bit of paper that says you have a qualification, in my view, is one of the biggest scams going on this planet at the minute, and it also connects in with like over-regulation and all that side of things, which the big builders and the giant companies just ignore all of that anyway. As I've said many times before, back in the day when apprenticeships were handled properly, then that would be a whole different story, but things just aren't handled properly anymore in terms of, certainly in terms of woodworking apprenticeships, as far as I can tell. Obviously, there's good training providers and there's bad training providers, but nah, qualifications and certifications aren't going to fix anything. My background, as a lot of you will be aware, is, well, apart from studio engineering, is in IT. And back in IT days, I've managed to find a rate card of what we used to charge customers back in, well, probably coming on for 15 plus years ago. The base level, absolute junior engineer, if we were sending a junior engineer out to a customer site, they may or may not be qualified. We had senior engineers and consultants who weren't qualified at all, and we had junior engineers with qualifications coming out their ears. Qualifications aren't the be-all and end-all, that's all I'm trying to say. Anyway, a junior engineer, the lowest ranking engineer we would send out to a customer site, we would charge at £45 an hour. And we would charge all the way up to £135 an hour. And that was back 15 years ago. And just a couple of years after that, we were charging a base rate, absolute base level junior engineer rate of £65 an hour, going all the way up to £200 an hour if the work was in central London. As I say, I have never known any other industry where your overheads are so high, but your hourly rates are so low. Jay says, great video. I ran a joinery business for years and charged £100 an hour. Splendid. Wayward Woodworker says, dead right, profit is not a dirty word despite the political climate today. And he goes on to say that his truck alone costs him 8,400 Canadian dollars a year. Our penultimate one, Mike Handy AB, says UK trades are too cheap. Completely agree. In the US, mowing is $1 a minute, mowing a lawn. So a bog standard lawn at 30 minutes, mow, trim and blow is $30, $60 an hour, just for cutting the grass. And finally, fantastic comment from Ningus21. Price isn't everything from the customer point of view, otherwise no one would buy £200 Nike trainers. It's all about perceived value. Don't join the race to the bottom. Exactly right. You've just got to do the numbers. Crunch the numbers. The numbers will give you the good or bad news. I can't tell you that. All I can do is point you in the right direction. One other really important point, someone did mention in the comments that you should be charging on a fixed price for the job and not an hourly rate. Yes, definitely. Don't tell the customer what your hourly or daily rate is. Or that just gets you into a whole heap of problems. I always charge a fixed price for the job, but you need to know in the background what your hourly rate is so you can price up the job in the first place. But yes, fixed price all the way. Probably the only exception where I would go out and charge on an hourly rate is if the customer's giving me like a long list of maintenance type repairs to do and I have no idea how long it's going to take. For that sort of thing, I would normally say to the customer, look, I'll charge you at £40 an hour plus materials, and I would mark up the materials as well, by the way. And then I would just plough through the list and they would know it's open-ended. Sometimes I would say, look, I'll get as much as I can done in a day so that we know it's never going to go past a certain amount for the day. Sometimes I would pre-arrange just a day rate, but you've got to be careful that you don't end up in a situation where you do all the work that's on the list and then the customer's like, oh, well, it's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm going to keep you here till 5 o'clock. Doing extra jobs for me. Doesn't work like that. Fixed price for the job all the way. You win some, you lose some. It's the only way it can work. And the parallel that I draw with all of this is that if you go into a shop and buy like a Mars bar or something, you don't ask how long it took to make the Mars bar. It's not the customer's business what your hourly rate is. All they need to know is how much are you charging for the job, and if they're happy with that price, whether it takes you 1 day or 5 days is irrelevant. They're happy with the price. So yes, absolutely, for normal self-employed work, and if you're a subcontractor or something, it's different because you're just going to go out at a day rate. But for normal self-employed work where you're having to win the business and all that sort of thing, definitely fixed cost for the job. Thank you once again, folks, for all of the comments on this video. Let's keep the discussion going because I think it's really interesting. As per usual, please, if you're managing to run a successful joinery business charging less than £30 an hour and you want to prove me wrong, send a redacted copy of your accounts to accounts@gosforthhandyman.com. No one's taken me up on that yet. Keep up the good work, folks. I shall see you next time. Bye.